meeting to order. Let's accept the minutes. For the meeting. Debbie? Second by
I wasn't there, so I probably should say.
Mr.
I
Vance.
watched it on video.
Any omissions or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. County attorney, cybersecurity.
You didn't say Mr. Rogers. So you have your cybersecurity report for this month. We had an uneventful cybersecurity month for October. If you remember, we did the proclamation for that. You'll see our statistics are a little low there on the right-hand chart. That's because we had one of our logs was giving us intermittent problems. It's being upgraded, and so our statistics are a little skewed, but they're cross-referenced with the other logs, so we're fairly confident that things are going the way they should be. It's just a statistical anomaly, if nothing else, not indicating a problem. So just update you a few other things. Suffolk County still is having problems paying their bills from that big incident they had a couple months ago. A lot of their smaller vendors especially are having a hard time getting paid. So that's something we need to keep on our radar screen if something ever happens to us. We're trying to issue paper checks and deal in cash, and that's really hard for them to do through their system. So there's some it's not only the initial incident that you have to deal with, it's the follow-up and then the tail, which lasts quite a long time as they're trying to recover their systems. And those attacks keep increasing. We get alerts all the time about different things like that. So internal vigilance is the price that we're paying, because this is the new way to go through things. But other than that, no significant incidents. I'm happy to report.
Good. Any questions for Roger?
I gotta say, at home, on our home computer, the amount of, hey, here's an invoice you forgot to pay, or here, it's exploded in the last 2-3 months, or 6 months. I used to get them once, twice a month. Now I get them 4 or 5 times a week. I don't know if it's just because it's so effective, but it's an amazing amount of things. And they've gotten into American Express and PayPal and all those kinds of things.
I know that my one of my relatives, she'll remain nameless, is constantly getting things saying she's locked out of her email account, and then she goes and reads her email. I said, well, clearly you're not. Read your email, but they're concerning because they're big and dangerous looking. Terrible things will happen to you. I personally got 3 or 4 calls from the IRS saying they were coming to get me here. I'm still here a couple months ago. So they're pretty scary looking when you get them. And folks you need to pay attention where they come from. So like in the middle of doing one thing, one of these things will pop up, and then it'll get people all concerned about things. Like if it pops up in the middle of a different program, chances are it's not related to that program. Banking is, the online banking things are sweeping nobody's business. So always verify, always make a phone call yourself to make sure if you get something like that it came from who you think it came from, and check the hover over the address and check to make sure where it came from. And you have to be very, very meticulous in checking, because it can only be one little character off from what you're used to seeing, and that can take you to a whole different universe. So unfortunately, I don't think you can trust anything. And lately, the old fax scams are back too. I'm a Canadian lumber baron. I didn't know that either, but I've been getting a lot of faxes from some law firm in Canada.
Recording in progress.
So I can ignore the emails from Debbie saying, oh, I thought they might have been a problem, so I just ignored it.
Well,
If
Debbie sends you a ticket asking you to buy Apple Music cards, or what are the other cards? Gift cards, right? Yes, I would ignore that, because we've already actually had that happen. When Chris was here, there was an email going out from his county asking people to buy gift cards.
I've actually had people get one
Yeah.
for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's
yeah,
fine.
I
get gift cards for people.
I guess the thing is, since when did all these people start taking iTunes cards as payment?
So you didn't get the one I sent you?
No, your gift cards are in the mail. I did not. Siri?
When as Christmas is approaching, you're gonna start seeing a pickup of tracking, package tracking, emails and scams. So keep an eye out for those too, I'd say.
Like the package you didn't know you ordered is on its way to you.
Yeah, track your package, or you think you did, and they look like legitimate, UPS type tracking numbers and those type of things until you click the link and then.
I would go through if you're tracking things, I would go through the website you ordered it from, going that way rather than just taking an unsolicited email that comes to you. Always try to go back to the source and go through it that way.
That's what happened.
My email provider, AT&T, has a screener that screens this stuff out. Cost me $5 a month.
Canceled, I had to get a new one in the mail.
Okay, any other questions for Roger? All right, Carrie, up to you.
Do you want me to come up or do you want just do it from here?
You can work from there.
Okay.
Just if you show up on video.
Oh, you gotta come on the video. Sorry, I'm on the screen.
Okay.
We've done this before.
David, this is a lot of meetings, you know.
So, the only things I have this month are the ticketing report and the projects report. Not sure if anybody has any questions, if we start with the ticketing report on that one.
Basement train room upgrade.
Yep, oh, on the projects report?
Yeah.
Yep, we're finishing up the cameras, so we have 18 cameras left to install. And as soon as those cameras are done, then we're gonna be picking up the training room.
The only one that really looks like it's kind of.
Well, we just got the TVs in last week, so we have been waiting on hardware, but we definitely need to get the camera project finished up, and it's the same resource that's doing both of those.
Any other questions for Carrie?
Thank you. And the only other thing, I guess I would reiterate what Roger said with the cybersecurity with Christmas coming, things are just gonna take up.
Yeah, just
So
the
just be
last
careful.
2 months.
Yeah,
And one of them, I swear to God, it had the American stuff in the logo. It's exactly the same copy. When I
So-
called American Express, they said forward it to them. I did, and then they called me back and said, yeah, that's totally scanned, but it wasn't the exact logo.
it's not hard to screenshot those things. I mean, the scammers actually, well, say you get one from 365, you get a 365, it's not a real 365 email, your account's been locked, and then you click on it, you click on a link, plug in your username and password, because that's how they're trying to collect your username and password. You go to the site and they have copied the whole site. I mean, you can go to any site and I can take my little screenshot, I can just drag and copy somebody's logo, you can post it up, there's actually programs where you can ingest the whole website and create a brand new HTML page that looks identical to it. It's not really all that difficult, honestly. And that's
Facebook's
how
the
they
same
get you.
thing. They got scams all over the place.
Yes, they do.
You see your friend there and his uncle's missing and run away and
Yeah,
got dementia and all this other stuff and dogs and cats and all these other things in there. Really scam.
yeah.
Plus, I think Facebook listens to you and my phone listens to me. I'll have a conversation. The next day, there's 3 ads on Facebook. And I said, that cannot be a coincidence.
It is.
From your phone, on a phone conversation, the next day you have ads based upon your phone conversation.
Unless somebody has a bug in my house, that's the only thing that can possibly be listened.
You never Google searched it or anything?
No, it's just part of a conversation I have with somebody. And the next day, there are 3 things about it.
I would not be surprised if you have a phone, it is listening to you all the time. Especially, like say you have even, the Androids do it too, but iPhones, hey Siri. How do you think it hears hey Siri?
Turn it off.
Because it's always listening.
I turn mine off. I push the button to go with Siri, but
Yep.
I think it's still listening.
Same thing if you ever have Alexas in your house or.
I don't think you can
Ask
turn it
those.
off. I think it's a bogus BS. I think they still listen.
I'm not gonna argue with that.
Go get yourself a flip phone.
Like,
That'll solve it.
like get smart.
All right. Anything else? Any other business? We're adjourned.
Conversation.
Very.
You don't sound.
Tenant.
We're not done anymore.
Must be the
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to call it that Dana Hogan. Or maybe, but still.
Yeah. This will do it.
And again, it's up to we didn't know.
Yeah, it says immediately following. Maybe they have no idea about that.
I just read it, this month's issue, I didn't know about.
Yeah.
it.
Faster than I can. I like Sam right now. You are?
There's that violet dog that's traveling in Argyle now. Saw that violet back in Argyle in 43 this morning.
Mr. Hanky?
Before we get started, most of you have had your highway guys have had their sexual harassment and workplace violence and stuff training when they did their plow training. But for all the rest of the people in your town, we're doing one, Phil's coming over, doing one November 30th, Wednesday, 9 o'clock in the morning, at the fire company. So if you've got people in your town that the town government needs to come to it, just let me know, and we'll make sure there's enough chairs and room for you.
We're doing one at 9 o'clock on a webinar.
Right,
That same morning, at the same time.
yeah,
We're encouraging everybody to do these aggregate sites because we only have one fill.
right.
So
So that's why I was.
the fewer sites we can do, the better it is for us.
So what time is it?
9 o'clock,
Is that
9
workplace
o'clock till
violence
2 p.m.
or the discrimination one? Or both?
both.
If Phil's doing, it's gonna be 9 o'clock to 2 p.m.
The one that
It'll be
Deb sent
thorough.
around, that one qualifies too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that qualifies for
Sexual
sexual harassment.
harassment.
I don't think that's got the workplace violence part of it. I'm not sure. The one Phil does covers the whole gamut of stuff.
I think there's only one we actually required.
No, they're both.
They both require.
And the ones I do for my job outside of here do not qualify.
I think if they, as long as they meet the qualifications of the state, and they do qualify, you only have to take it once. You don't have to take it each place you've been, but you gotta be able to show that you've been. And then it
I'm gonna
meets
send you my certificates.
the criteria.
I'll let you double check those.
Do we know of any municipality that have been audited about that?
Except for 3 out of them.
I don't know if anybody's been audited yet.
We were,
Were you?
yeah, they came up over all our training records.
The city or
Yep, they didn't have-
just the highway guys or everybody? Because
Everybody.
technically,
It's
your recreation part-time people are supposed to do all that stuff. Did they check that thoroughly?
Yep, they did, they went through everything.
So what do you do if you have somebody who refuses to do it?
I don't know, ask the
Especially
attorney.
elected officials.
What do you do?
Well, as an elected official, you can't, there's not much you can do about elected official, but as an employee, that's a condition of employment. You're not in compliance with the conditions of employment.
The one thing I know that is happening with elected officials, though, it's going public or has gone public with some municipalities out west.
Yeah.
That Danielle has found out about, and they've taken it to the paper, and it's actually listed the names of the elected officials.
Like,
But the problem is, if you have a lawsuit and your name's on that list, you're.
I think it's a bit of a harassment that you have to do this annually. What other training do you have to do?
I have to do OSHA training annually. I have
Almost all of
36
it,
portals I have to do annually.
Mine safety, all the bills, Phil does annual, about the time he gets done with the first year, he starts on the second
Firearms.
year.
Slip, trip, falls, roof, a whole bunch of ones.
We do annual training, we do annual refresher training for all our employees.
Where's that gonna be, Bob, in your highway department?
At the fire company. 9 o'clock, there'll probably be coffee and donuts.
Cool.
An awful lot of things today. That's why you don't remember what Debbie tells us at every meeting.
Oh, sorry,
Cool in your coffee.
I didn't mean to subvert your meeting here, but.
That's okay. We don't have a whole lot and our biggest topic isn't here, so. She did.
Say that thing about violence. I
Yeah.
saw on Facebook, but post I say for friends and do not share public. Ask me, can you make it public? You can share, but
So we.
people post these things on the weirdest damn sites that no one would see, like Glens Falls Community was, I saw that.
But that mastiff,
Yeah.
yeah, that belongs to a dentist though, Hudson Falls.
And I tried to share it, but it wasn't shared. How long have you been missing?
Well,
Holy crap. She's still look big.
I can't believe something that size and that color that gets shot yet.
What's missing?
A mastiff dog about that high.
Well, it might be in the woods somewhere.
No, the photo.
Could be staying in Argonne, but
Wait.
that could be a problem.
Yeah, right.
You might even get field dressing.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. And first thing is we'll accept the minutes for the October 25th meeting for government ops. Moved by Dave, seconded by
If I was here, I will.
Matt.
I think I was.
Any discussion, corrections, changes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Was that the meeting where Matt
Carried.
protested about moving the board of supervisors meeting? Was that one of the? What subcommittee was that?
That was a real board meeting.
That was a special board meeting, right?
Okay. The next thing up is we only have one thing from buildings and grounds, and Matt wasn't able to be here today, so Melissa is covering his topic for him.
We had a bid out for the Law Center roof replacement. You have the results of that bid on the back of your agenda. Looking to award the bid to the lowest bidder, which was Greenwood Industries. There is a base bid of $1,607,000. There is an additional 5-year warranty on top of the 25-year warranty of $77,000. Matt does not recommend or think that we really need to purchase that. So it would just be the actual base bid that we're looking to award. The funding for this is the capital project, capital plan. That amount is actually $512,000 more than what the bid came in at. I'm assuming that there will be a budget amendment that will have to take place. So we'll have that information financed after I speak to the treasurer.
You need a motion to consider finance. to approve the minutes.
Yes, please.
Matt makes the motion, seconded by Dave.
Second.
Further discussion?
The bid came in lower than what
Yes.
we had budgeted, that's right.
There you go. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Another concern.
Okay, Roger.
So I don't know, which way these are all going through, so I'll start with this one, the highway barn, the new post highway barn in Easton. Remember, we're buying a sliver of land. We finally got all the releases off that person so they can sell it to us. Description's done. We're about ready to close on purchasing that. And the question came up, do we want to buy title insurance on the part? We've been there forever on our part, but on the part that we're purchasing, it's going to be a multi-million-dollar building that's going to be partially located on this chunk, partially located on what we already have. I would say to you, it's always a good idea to get title insurance, but if we're parking on it, it might be a different story, but we're putting a building on it, it's going to be fairly expensive. So I would recommend you get title insurance. There'll be an additional cost. I'm getting a quote now. Shouldn't be too awful much, but I just want to get the census of
I think I should
the
get
organization to go through and get. All right.
Right. I would highly concur with that recommendation.
Yeah, we hadn't discussed that expense before. But with a piece of the building located on it, I just think it's a good idea. We're usually selling land, not buying, so. That's something to consider. All right, I'll get the quote and report back once we have that. And then we should be ready to close on that fairly soon, hopefully by the end of the year.
Roger, do they, the people we're buying it from, do they have title insurance on their, when they bought it?
On the piece of it, I believe they do, and so we're gonna probably get the policy after I get a quote from the same person that wrote the initial policy on the entire parcel.
So that should be relatively,
Should be inexpensive,
yes.
but it's an expense that we never talked about whether or not we wanted to procure it, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we see that itemization. It should be relatively expensive.
Any others? So we were expecting Board of Elections to be here to discuss the election, but they are not here. We have requested them to.
They're on their way, so they said.
They're on their way. Is there anything else anybody wants to discuss at government ops while we wait for them?
Yeah, Daryl doesn't have his yellow vest on, the quorum.
He's in his town hall now.
He still has
Yeah,
it.
I'm in the luxurious town hall that's
That's where
Before
Dana's
you-
chair went, right there. He took it back to Putnam, Dana. Your
Yeah, so I
chair
give you-
from the Board of Supervisors.
give you a
Good place
quick quick virtual tour of our huge massive structure here. Okay, there you go.
I don't know, even those straight
There's the
chairs.
justice way in the corner there. I got Santa up. That's good.
I'm jealous. You have a desk. I don't even have a desk.
I had to put a demarcation line up and all kinds of things to get this space. Trust me. Personally purchased a very own sign.
What's his exceptional
Circumstance.
I don't know. Did you have something? Rick?
Yeah, I just let you know, this is a call for Public Works on
Coming from public
Tuesday.
education. He doesn't need a septic system.
Yeah.
They basically finished the Church Street Bridge. There's two parcels that the county acquired. Also going into those details. On both sides of the bridge, they need to use those parcels to build the bridge, which they have. Now the bridge is done, they don't need those parcels, but they would like to keep the parcels, even though they're really small, with access. So if there's any issue with the bridge in the future, forever, 50 years from now, they can do it. One of those parcels has a small house on it, which is no good to the county. It's just a maintenance issue. So I'm gonna bring up, after Deb explains this next Tuesday, to ask if they would subdivide that off and then sell that so the county can make a few bucks off it. Otherwise, we gotta maintain it and mow it and do all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna let her send the Public Works, but if they come back here, because we'll probably need to move out here. And then usually Laura goes to the local planning board to do the subdivision. I'm just gonna get it started, because it'll take 6 months to go through all this. So here, try. Get it. Thank you.
You're optimistic.
But I gave Debbie a copy of this, and she can put it on the screen at Public Works next week.
Okay.
That's informational.
If they subdivide off that small house, is there sewer and water there? Is it still a buildable lot? Will your planning board allow that?
No, it's too small. What you're subdividing off the house is a parking lot, maybe the size of this room.
That's gonna be left or that's
It's
gonna
gonna be
be. sold?
left, and it's, that'll be what the county keeps. And it's too
No,
small.
I mean, when you take it away from the house, is the house lot now?
It'll be,
buildable lot?
it'll be grandfathered in because there's an existing structure there.
But there's water and sewer.
Yeah, the local water.
Okay, welcome Jeff and Tom. We're up to you guys. And the Report for the Board of Election.
Moving right along really fast this morning.
We do. Right, usually they come immediately following. Usually everybody comes at the first start time.
So, yeah, we're doing, trying to certify everything, we're almost certified. By the end of today.
So let me tell you about Tuesday. That's what you're interested
So,
in.
Yep.
We got phone calls starting about 6:15 that we're having problems in some of the towns. We identified it was the first 7 towns. And it made a red flag right off the bat. It's when we switched from doing 17-inch ballots with 2-inch perms on them. We stopped using them and just started printing ballots on 17-inch. We were having such problems with the machine. The machine, when you do 17 with the perm, there's an extra drawer on the end of the machine. And it was jamming while we were printing them. We had the company come in and do repairs, replace different things in the machine. The theory is, there's 2 theories on it. One is when you lay paper flat that has a perm in it, it tends to pucker up. So when it was going in the machine, it was catching, jamming. We were literally losing thousands of ballots. So we finally decided to ditch the perm altogether. It's not required. We've just done it for years and just printed the ballot without the perm, without the 2-inch perm on it. And it went.
You're using language I don't understand. What is a perm?
The perforated 2-inch
Where you can tear it out of the book.
out of
And leave
the
it stuck. Okay, I should say it's a 2-inch stuck.
stub ballot.
The difference between using the stub and the non-stub is it's a little easier to track the ballots when they come back on how many ballots have been used. You have the stubs. Okay, so after the election, we account for every ballot that we send out. we can just look and say the next ballot that hasn't been used is 362, we're looking for 361 ballots for that kind of election. That's one of the ways we prove that every ballot's accounted for. In this way, when we open a pack of 50, we have to go through and see how many are left in the pack. It's just that.
So does it make a matter? Because I know I can turn it upside down and it takes it either way. Would it matter if you put the perfect
No,
out?
it'll scan any which way. The issue was the timing mark on the ballot. When it was getting pulled from the drawer, it was shifting in the printer. So it wasn't straight when it was getting printed. And the timing marks were running off the edge of the ballot. So there was no issue with the machine. The machine was fine. The machine was doing what it was supposed to do. It wasn't recognizing the ballot, so it was kicking the ballot out. The issue was right on the edge of the ballot. The timing marks were running right off too close to the edge of the ballot.
So I think this is the machine that's going to read it.
Can we say scanner
Scanner.
versus
We
printer
can say the
versus
scanner,
copier?
yes. The scanner is going to read it. It has a mechanism inside to read it like this. And when the ballot was going through, the paper was fine, but the print was slightly off.
Right.
And so it couldn't read it.
If those timing marks are off a little bit, it's just not reading them.
So back up a second. 2 weeks before the election, we proved these ballots.
Well,
But we
test
printed
that,
them on 17-inch ballot. We didn't do it with perf on the end of it.
which you never did.
So the difference was that the ballots that were the problem were coming out of that extra drawer. And whatever we had done to try to fix it, it caused the machine to misprint them. And we're talking 7 towns, that's probably about 10,000 ballots that went through the machine like that. And we're assuming, because we've tested the ballots, that everything's fine. We're not looking for a misprint in the print.
And everything tested fine. So once we realized the situation, we contacted the state right away, told them what was happening. We went to the protocol and emergency ballots. We started printing all the new ballots from Argyle to Granville. Greenwich to Whitehall, the 8.5 by 17 printed fine and any issues with those ballots. We got the new ballots to Argyle to Granville by noon, 12:30, they were back up and running. So all those ballots that were the emergency ballots, we scanned later with Roger and Tom and I and Roger, they were scanned. Every ballot was accounted for and they were added into the total. But the issue, and of course, everybody automatically thought it was a machine issue, which there was no machine issue at all. The issue was the timing marks on the ballot. There's a printing issue. No, there was no machine issue at all. Actually, the machine was doing what it was
Scanner
supposed to. I'm sorry. The scanner was doing what it was supposed to do.
If this had not happened, everything is done exactly like we've done it before. We do have occasion to have scanner problems on election day. We did replace a scanner.
But they were fixed. They usually don't have an issue with that.
In Hartford, because a jammed ballot was pulled backwards instead of forwards to the machine, which caused the machine.
And that was an inspector. That was an inspector issue because the jam wasn't cleared properly. And that wasn't.
So there were a few other
Scanners.
problems besides this.
Dan?
I guess my question goes back to the basic thing, when you made the copies of the ballots.
Yes,
So did you check those through a voting machine to see if they actually were right before they were?
Well, we do the first couple, but once they're tested, and then you start printing the booklets, because they're already tested. We test the first couple before we start stapling the booklets.
when the
together.
testing is done, it's more than one ballot. You have to do several different combinations of this person's
There's like
vote, this one's.
300 ballots that we do our test decks, and when they have, all the test decks are fine.
Was that on a voting machine?
Yes, all the voting,
The
machines, they all have to
actual-
do test deck before they go out. If they don't pass the test deck, they don't go out.
Yeah, it just seems ironic that you can do 10,000 ballots and then do 300 of it. They were
Well,
okay.
because we don't do them with the,
It wasn't pulling out of that drawer. That was the problem.
and that was the problem. When they were getting pulled through that drawer, they're jamming and they weren't getting pulled straight. They were little cockeyed. So it was printing off that.
I have Dan, then Jimmy, then Matt.
What happened in Easton? You haven't explained that one.
stuff.
Edison was the first to get the replacement ballots that we printed.
There was our gal through Grand.
And then we got a message that the scanner was not working correctly on this, on the machine. We called Eric Allen.
And that was a jam machine.
Went over, couldn't fix it. Came up here, got a new scanner, we took it down and replaced it.
And there was a jam.
At 7:30 that night is when I voted. I stood in line for an hour and a half. And at that time, we were only taking every other ballot. And people were so disgruntled about the fact they didn't believe that their votes were being counted. And why that wasn't fixed by 7:30 at night.
Well, take your stuff.
Every other ballot, I stood there for an hour and a half, watched it. Every other ballot had to be, they put it in 4 times, every different way, upside down.
And that was.
And so that, what was that? That was that, you'd already replaced the ballot, you replaced the scanner.
Yeah.
7:30
at night.
Oh, in the evening
in
and,
the evening.
well, that,
Well,
we had to replace
We got a
that
dependency
scanner.
on the inspectors to tell us what's going on. And after we replaced that scanner, they didn't communicate to us that there was still problems going on with that.
And all those
I know that's not
emergency
a good
ballots were
excuse, but
scanned out.
That's where that's who dropped the ball, was the workers down there.
You're telling us that there were further issues, yes. Otherwise, we would know. These machines are 12 years old. Their only life expectancy is 10. Which we talked about before, that's coming up. And anytime you have a 2-sided ballot, the machines get real testy. They had that proposition on the back of the ballot. So they're getting antsy. They've been well used, gotten our money's worth out. And these were all paid with grants too. Money out of our pockets.
I do, let's see. Okay, Jim.
Who does the printing of the perforated?
We get our ballot paper from 2 different sources. It's mostly Bidsy's printing and writing.
And those were the ballots that were not.
Well, it's more, we thought possibly it could be a cut issue, but it's more, the more we looked into it, it was our issue with our printer.
We
It
print-
wasn't a paper.
But
We print off paper we buy.
yes,
I'm sorry, what's that?
We print, use our own printer to print off paper we buy. So we don't buy ballots, we buy paper.
So it was our, okay.
Yeah, we do all in-house printing.
so once we found this out, one of the ironic thing is, we didn't have in stock enough 17.5 by 8.5, or 17 by 8.5 paper to replace all those. But we had stub ballots, and I stood there with the stubs off about 15,000 sheets. And we used that paper that used to be stub ballots.
And it was
Replace
fine
them with
without
other
this stuff.
7 towns. So it really is a combination of the misprint and the machine
Scanners.
trying to print from that other drawer, having the service people come in, fix it, replacing parts. And it finally got to a point where we were jamming so often, we couldn't even print out the ballots. And we decided to get rid of that stuff. Once that was gone, the printing went smoothly for the rest of the
And
time.
we just used 8.5 by 17 stock, didn't use any more stuff, which we're not gonna put ourselves through this again. We wanna go to, like we do for the early voting, the on-demand printing. We wanna do that. We're not gonna put ourselves through, we're all done printing. It's just too much.
Did you have follow-up?
I had another question too. So similar to Dan Shaw, lines just seem to get longer and longer. And in White Creek, we have 2 divisions. We have, or 2 districts, District 1, District 2, but there's only 1 steno.
Well, the issue was, that the lines were so long, because everybody, we had an issue with the ballot.
No,
not
not White
White
Creek,
Creek.
not White Creek. So the situation is District 1 and District 2, they're using the same steno, so to sign in with. So it's really before, if you were standing there, hey, you're District 1, go up to District 1, District 2's open, go to District 2. You could get somebody with 6 ballot boxes, and not at any point where those 6, not ballot boxes, but ballot table, yeah. At no point were they all 6 filled. It was 3 at any point. I mean, there's people standing outside. My point is I've never seen backups like that in the last couple of years.
Right.
I voted in White Creek since I was 18, and over 20 years. I've never seen the backup like that,
Right.
standing in line an hour and 15 minutes to vote.
Well, another thing, we should get more poll books. So we can have extra.
And you should pull, but you're talking this day, yeah, that's what would be, what's the cost for each one of those poll books?
I don't know offhand without going back.
Oh, gee, okay, all right.
But we have 50 poll books right now.
Let me give you just a couple statistics. When you're in the off years where it's just the county and the town, 20% turnout is good.
Yeah.
This was governor year, 50% is good. Presidential year, 70% is good. So on an off year, it goes a lot smoother because there's less people. If the jamming were to occur on the governor year and the presidential year, there would probably be some lines. Make a choice of, do we buy enough machines, both the iPads and the machines, voting machines, to cover the presidential at what cost, okay? And I'll give you some statistics on this one. It was a 68%,
We had 58 overall
58% overall
turnout.
county. Guess who was number one? Cambridge.
68%.
And Greenwich was number two,
Greenwich was 67.
Greenwich had a heavy turnout because of their highway superintendent.
Yes, that was.
And Cambridge was very motivated.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be ideal to have
More machines.
great to have more poll books, so we could have more at each.
I just don't
Each
want to,
district have a poll book and.
I don't want to disenfranchise younger voters to not want to go out and stand in line, you know, it's, you can see it, you know, I feel like, you know, when you go out and stand in line for an hour and 15 minutes, the person that I voted for didn't win. Through that, I'm not doing it
I
again
mean,
in 2
it'd be
years.
great to be able to have.
Yes, right, I know, with 5 dozen, yeah, 17 towns.
It'd be great because you're gonna have better.
We don't have
flow.
early voting.
You know, we're very hopeful that the new machines will work better. Instead
Oh,
of
they
having to
definitely work.
flip them over, flip them back, around
We had,
to put them through.
some, for early voting, we had, 1,972 people.
What was that
Early
comparison?
voted.
What was that comparison to the general election 2 years ago?
And we had, for the president, for the
Yeah,
presidential, we
yeah.
had 5,000
Okay.
early voted. Presidential.
Okay, Matt, your question?
Okay, so the issue was the ballots that were printed on our copier in-house in one tray.
Yes.
Didn't work.
And that's the,
Yes,
oh, sorry.
The other tray A or trays did work.
yes.
But when you tested that 300 whatever in the beginning, you just tested obviously the trays that worked and not the other tray.
Yes,
So going forward,
it would make sense to try to test them.
every
No,
tray.
That's the only tray that will hold that paper.
I know, but what he was saying is that when we print the test ballots, we print them from that tray on stubs. And then,
Yeah, but then we gotta tear all those stubs up, which,
which is not possible.
yeah, well, we're not gonna do it. We're done printing. We're not putting ourselves through that.
Okay, so that's where I'm headed. So we print in-house, we print everything in-house, right?
Yes,
Okay, with a $50,000 copier that we purchased, right?
oh, yes, and what that does, if we do 3 elections a year like we did this year, it gets saved about $80,000.
Okay, so we have, I'm trying to get to the point of how this doesn't happen in 2 years.
Right.
Is it a machine error? Is it a human error? Where's the kink in the chain here that we need to fix?
Okay.
So it doesn't happen again.
You can go 2 ways to fix this. One is we go to a new system that doesn't use these machines anymore.
Okay.
Which machine?
We go in, yeah.
They're all
Like we have now,
No, voting machine.
Just the voting.
just get rid of them and buy a new set of machines, which are totally different.
But you said the problem wasn't with the machine, the problem was with the printing of our copier of the ballots.
Yes, the other direction is that we can print out of house with a independent printer.
Okay,
Then we
And
waste.
a lot more cost at printing 110% on every election.
okay.
Or the on demand.
Now, the other thing, the third one is on demand. Those machines cost less than $1,000 each.
What machines?
Printer,
It's just
so
a
we print the
printer,
ballot. So you would come in,
like early voting.
you would give the name, you would sign the iPad, and when you were done signing the iPad, the inspector would press a button. That printer right there will print your ballot.
Automatically, there's
Just
no
yours.
waste. So it just prints your ballot automatically.
At each town, each polling station.
Each polling location would have a printer.
What happens? Sorry.
Each district, because it would be one polling station with 3 districts, you need 3 printers there, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Or how many ever poll books you have, they have their own printer to that poll.
iPad and printers.
Yeah.
Who's the IT engineer who's gonna be at every district to make sure those printers are printing correctly?
It would be set up prior, they're all set.
They're no
If
direct.
something happens,
Then you would have, for emergency situation, you'd have some.
We still print ballots.
Okay,
Just 50
okay.
ballots in case. If then you did it, then until we got another printer. Okay.
On this subject,
Roommate, it's not your turn yet.
I'm
There's a
still-
long line ahead of you,
Yeah, I'm
sir.
formulating my question, my next question, go ahead.
conspiracy theorists say if you bring the ballot,
Yeah.
you're tying the voter to that ballot.
It
I'm
automatically,
surprised you didn't vote on.
Yeah, but he doesn't know how you vote on that ballot.
no, it just, there's
If the
no,
ballot could be identified with a number on it, you can figure out. who-
there's no
There is
number to the ballot. It's just a district. So it's
I'm
just,
telling you, I'm saying the conspiracy theorists.
well, that's now. There's no difference now.
But it's irrelevant, the fact that they're 12 years old with a 10-year lifespan, when they didn't have any issues, they didn't screw up.
But they're gonna
They
be
didn't read
obsolete
it.
anyway.
Jeff, listen, you've been interrupting him all the time, and I've missed half of what he said because you keep talking. So the scanners all worked. If the ballots are proper, the scanners all work. So the fact that they're 12 years old is irrelevant. The scanners were working, right?
Not quite.
Or didn't they work in?
They did not work.
There,
in East.
Is it because of the ballots?
there's a common problem with the machines where you have to flip them over or turn them backwards to make them work, where people are standing and having to enter it 2 or 3 times.
So you got a ballot and you got a machine. How do you know which is the problem?
Machine is a scam.
Scanner. Well, how do you know which one's the problem?
It's probably the scanner.
Okay, probably. We don't know. I'm just saying, we got to get to a point, because if this happens in 2 years, it'll be monumental. How can we discern whether it was those issues in Easton were the scanner machine issues or the ballot issues?
Originally, it was the ballot and then it was the scanner.
Okay. So Dan, would you have one polling site?
We have 1 site, 2 districts, and
How many
1
scanners?
iPad and 1 scanner. And they replaced the scanner before noon, I think, or around noon.
Mhm.
And they had replaced the ballots, I think, by 7:30 that morning. But still, by 7:30 that night, it was still on the new scanner, was still only accepting every other one at the best.
Which is.
In the morning, it was 1 in 3 that was accepting. And then when they changed scanner, it was 1 out of 2.
They actually brought a different scanner in? or they
Eric Allen
fixed it?
came down with a difference. Well, it's a top half, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it's just a machine that sits on top of the big black box. It sits on top.
I mean, and I watched them continuously that hour and a half, because we were in a big circle, 2 circles inside the Burton Hall, which is a big building. They put them in one way, and the election worker would say, try rotating it. They did it the other way, they did it upside down, and it had to come back. Finally, they had to shove it in, and then they wouldn't fit anymore. So they have to stop and go around back, open the door, and take all of them out and lock them in a box, so they can start filling the box again underneath. That's where you put them when the scanner won't take it.
That's an emergency slot.
There's a slot underneath
It's
it.
not very big.
Okay. Is there gonna be a proposal on how this does not happen 2 years from now? Because we're in municipal government here, things take 2 years.
Yes.
How are we gonna solve this problem so this doesn't happen again?
One thing is we have to wait a little bit of time, because new machines that are available, only 1 has been approved by the state of New York, certified to purchase. There's 2 other companies that have put in. We've gotten bids from all 3 of them. We have one that we'd like to have it purchased in place by the 2023 election. So that we're not implementing this on an election year. The one that we like is not approved yet, right?
It's close.
It's close.
They're the ones that are gonna be, they're way before and in advance than the other 2.
And they don't look anything like what we have right now. It's not a big black box. They're 2 smaller machines. One is for the regular voting for everybody. And you do put it in just like you always do, into a slot, it takes it in. And the other machine is a separate machine for the handicap requirements from the government for disabled people. Now, these machines are rated for so many ballots, like the machines we have right now are rated for over 2,000 ballots, 2,000 voters. That's why you only have one in Easton. Because you only have a little over 1,000 registered voters in Easton. So that's one of the reasons how we calculate which towns get more than one. When you go to a district of Kingsbury, which has 9 districts and 3 in each poll site, then it is necessary for at least 2. Whitehall would be the same way, Granville's potential one is.
Well, when you dispersed all the scanning machines out for this election, how many did you have left in inventory?
Probably about 8, of which some of them don't work.
Okay, we go about 30.
So how many did you have ready for an emergency?
We had these 4 or 5.
When you do an emergency, it's not like it's sitting there ready to go. You do have to program the cards and put it in according to which town it is. So we can just pull one and within 45 minutes, we have one ready to go.
Okay.
But you said you had some that didn't work.
Yeah, we have some that don't work because they're broken.
But the majority of the issues were with the ballots, not with the machines.
Yes.
So you're gonna purchase new machines.
Yes.
So if you purchase new machines and you still have a problem with the ballots, we're no better off. We're no better off.
Well, yeah, to answer your question, if we're printing the ballot at the poll site next to the inspector, if it ends up being a problem with that, we have to have spares available that we can take out. And we also had ballots that are printed at the poll site that we sent out in case of an emergency that isn't working. Okay, because machines fail. This is a classic example of a machine failure. It's not a procedure failure, it's a machine failure that we didn't anticipate. And
You think the solution would be to print the ballots individually as somebody's gonna vote at each site,
yes.
at each district?
Yes, because, you know, in this one, when you go into Kingsbury and you're having a primary, okay, Republican and a Democrat primary, District 4 has a Republican and Democrat primary ballots. District 5 has a Republican Democrat ballot. District 6 has a Republican Democrat ballot. When we get to that printer, it'll just print the one that's needed.
So you wouldn't need 6 printers, you just need 1.
Just need one.
Okay, so those printers are not on site now, so this is an additional thing for the inspectors to be able to run and work.
Right, we do have for early voting using the system for a couple of years now, and it has worked really well.
Okay,
Also, one of the things too is we're looking into is have these machines that are connected, the iPads connected directly to the printer and not on the internet at all.
okay.
Which we were working with.
Considering what happened here, you're thinking that system would have not, the situation wouldn't have happened. It would
Yes.
prevent that from going forward.
Yes.
I'll add you to the list.
Go ahead, I gotta come back to something else.
Dana,
I have a question now about what happens if I go to vote. Machine won't, the scanner won't accept it for whatever reason, problem with the scanner, or problem with the way it was printed. I say, I don't want to wait 2 hours. I'm a Republican. I vote on the day of voting, and this is going to disenfranchise me because lots of Republicans vote on the day of voting.
Mhm.
So if you can't vote on the day of voting, guess what? Your vote might not count. So if I say I want to fill out the ballot, I'm not going to wait. The machine won't take it. I fill it out, you put it into an emergency drawer.
Mhm.
How is that emergency drawer then counted?
Okay. Emergency drawer is a slot drawer that pops out of the front of the machine itself. It has a lock on it. To open it and then to close it, it has a lock. It's just a slot in the side of the machine with a space in it. That ballot goes in there. When those are removed, okay, in this case, the machine isn't operating to take them. What we did was through the court order that Judge McElhaney gave us, had all of those brought back to us. We had a scanner on election night that scanned all those ballots.
How did they get transported back to you? And I'm getting to the point of
Sheriff's
this, where I have heard.
Sheriff deputies brought them
All of them,
back, all of them.
none during the day. They transport them at night. Jeff didn't bring anybody back, inspectors didn't bring anybody back, poll workers didn't bring anybody back. They were all back by the sheriff post 9 o'clock.
No,
That's where you were going, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Some of them didn't reach us until after midnight.
But those were sheriff's ballots.
Those were sheriff's for evening.
Some were transported before the polls closed during the day.
Is that kosher? Is that by the rules?
That should not have happened. That's what caused the court order.
But in every case, it was a deputy that transported them from the polling
After the
station.
polls.
After 9 o'clock, Dan, not before 9 o'clock. Transported before 9 o'clock, not by a deputy.
Who transported them before? A deputy?
No.
Who? A individual of one party? Did they have
Yes.
Democrat, Republican side by side in the car? Or was it one individual of one party?
One individual brought him back from sites, and it was observed by 2 inspectors in the poll site. The ballots were, emergency ballots were put into a bag, which had a seal put on it. There was a form that is signed to show the trail, how it got here, and when it got here, it was signed off on Board of Elections and put into a closet that locks with 2 doors.
But in the middle of that, the seal and everything, one person has possession of that bag. The chain of custody, one person has possession of that bag.
Yes, when it went from the poll site to the Board of Elections.
That's not kosher, is it?
No,
I wouldn't think so. How can you even count those votes?
they were never, the seals were never broken.
Guys,
I'm on the list.
Dan.
Yes.
No, it's not your turn to
We
talk,
have
it's
the
your turn to
report
listen.
That has everything.
How far am I on the list?
So the
Longer
point
if
is
you keep
that
talking.
somebody signed off on all this stuff. But even that event, it's not the proper protocol or procedure that needs to be followed. It was done incorrectly. How do we prevent that from happening going forward? I mean, oh, no.
Well, I have the report. We can bring it right over. Scott,
You know, one of the things that happened
I
after,
have it. I can vote in it.
you know how I said that every ballot that goes out, is free account for every single one of them when they come back? That was done on those 2 sites, that every single ballot in that, in those sealed bags added up to the amount that. had been printed. So there was nothing missing, okay, but you're right.
So the end justifies the means. That's not the kosher way to do things
It
here.
wasn't. But we were.
How do
also-
we institute controls and governance to prevent these things from happening again? Because I don't want to be sitting here 2 years from now doing this again because it'll be just hell to pay. But it's just, there are multiple issues that we need to deal with here, right?
Okay,
How
so
do we institute controls to fix this?
why don't we say that we're making our list of things that have to be controlled, because there's another 6 people that want to ask questions. And if we keep asking the same thing, so we can make our list of things that have to be addressed down the line. Dan,
Yes, I have several, so I know Matt will.
there's
get
other people
involved
who
with
haven't
this.
got to ask it all yet, so maybe just one now and then I'll come back to you. 'Cause
It's all
our-
tied together. How many voting districts, if we've got 50 iPads, how many voting districts are there in Washington County?
You got 50 districts.
50 districts.
50 districts? Then when there's 2 districts in the town of Easton, why don't we have 2 iPads?
Because the town, we rate the machine on how many ballots they can take, how many registered voters there are in the town. And there's a formula for that, on how many machines go out based on registered voters. And turnout.
And
When
Dan,
I came in.
Dan, I don't want to sound rude or picky, but we were talking when they explained that, use your town as an example. They did.
Well, they might have, but for me to make my point, I had to start there. So I'm working to my point. So when I finally got up to vote, I asked the election worker, I said, there's a ton of people in here. I said, is it the scanner that's slowing this process up? Because it's not taking the ballots? And he said, no, we only have 1 iPad and we have to go with 1 iPad on 2 districts, and it's a very slow process. If we had 2 iPads, this would go twice as fast. And if that's the case, then we ought to have an iPad for every district. And that would eliminate half the problem, especially in my town. And the other part was, you want to answer that first before I ask you the second hand?
Yeah, because there's a point I want to make on that. In the presidential election, there was only 1 iPad and 1 machine there, and we didn't have any problems. The people waiting over an hour.
Well, you said you weren't even aware that the machine wasn't working at 7:30 at night. So maybe there's a communication problem more than anything else, because we had long lines on election night.
Up until this election, one iPad and one machine in Easton had worked fine. For years.
And I'm just telling you what the election worker said.
Yes, I understand.
And the second half, all those ballots, the second scanner would not work with. When they come up here, they all work perfectly in the scanner when you scan them up here?
Yeah, it's a separate scanner we had here, accepted all but 10, and then we had to look at those 10. And
So that we had two faulty scanners, and it basically is what you're saying. And
pretty much, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Okay,
When the other one wasn't.
Sam, your turn.
Ballot.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, I understand this, the signing aspect of it. But if the machines aren't working, the faster you sign them in, you're just gonna have those same people with the ballots. They may be able to vote them, but they're gonna be standing around in one room, you're gonna have everybody acting like sardines. That's part of the problem. They are, you may not in your place, but in some of the smaller places you will be. I've got 2 districts of 40 here. Okay, if I've got 2 scanners going, which would be the optimum thing to do. If the machine's not taking a ballot, you're signing people in to take ballots and stand inside that room till they're all like this. They can vote their ballots, you know, but it depends, I think, on the district. This whole thing from the very beginning, okay, was not run the way that it should have been run. I'm just gonna say that out here. I didn't find out as chairman until about 10:30 that there was even a problem, okay? Melissa, as county administrator, didn't find out about the same time I did. Roger was getting a phone call about that point in time. There were some things that we could have done at that point in time with other assets of the 2 parties to help get ballots where they needed to be if we had known, okay? And that's, you know, you're not an island over there by yourselves. There are other departments that can chip in and help and do what they need to do and maintain the integrity of things. All right, so that's where the first thing started, all right? You know, down in Easton, to be at 7:30 at night, that was a fiasco that should never happen. It's you know, we're going around about the same things. And Matt is right. We have to put a program together that's going to address this so it doesn't happen again. And not 2 years down the road, in a year now, because we've got an election coming up a year from now. Right? And then that'll give us an opportunity to see if the thing's going to work. You know, if we've got machines that are not working, that they're not functionable, then shame on us. But again, our hands are tied if we can't purchase new machines because the state hasn't approved them. Okay. So I think that, you know, we got to take a look, like Cassie said, make our list of what we need to do and go back, because from the very beginning, the thing was set up for failure from the time the doors open. And you know, it's not necessarily a reflection on you guys, because I understand you guys are out delivering machines. Pat's had other people out delivering machines the day before, and those types of things. So I think that we need to get back to the basics. We need to, if we need 2 scanners, and if we need 2 sign-in pads at some of the buildings, maybe Dan's will. And my 2 places in Fort Ann, both of them. You know, it's just a matter if they can't put the machines in, they can vote their ballot, but they're just going to be creamed up inside, because once they go back outside of their ballot, it doesn't count. They're not supposed to be able to use that ballot if you take it out of the building. So, you know, I think there's a whole thing that we need to look at, and it depends, and they have to take a look at each polling place that they have and more or less design it for what's going to work for that polling place. You know, you've got a big facility down there, and I understand, okay, people would want their ballot, they could go in, but they're gonna have the ballot, they can vote it, but they're gonna be standing in it for an hour line anyways, because you've got them all packed in like sardines.
You still have the poll worker who's working the door, who you know, can see that and not keep letting people in. But I mean, voting previously, before having these stenos, you know, the door person, are you District 1 or District 2? District 1. Okay, District 1's open, go ahead. They open the book, you sign your spot, and you get your ballot. And if you're a District 2, so District 1 can handle it and District 2 can handle it. Now we've got 4 people sitting there, 5 actually, 2 for each district and 1 person on the steno. And they're just, there's an opportunity there to move things more efficiently through the voting cycle. You know, it's hard to hear that we have 50 stenos for our 50 districts, but yet district that has, and I get that the population in voting, you know, there's an algorithm that you're using, but it's frustrating that you know, it shouldn't take an hour and 15 minutes to stand in line in White Creek to go in and vote on any election. It never has. So-
All it might do, but you have to step back and look and see where you're gonna have the bottleneck. Is the bottleneck gonna be here, and when you can fix this spot, are you only gonna make it worse here, like Sam is saying, and this? So we understand that's one of the things people are gonna look over, so
Yeah,
we'll move on to the next question. Dave,
So first of all, Hampton had an issue with belts too. We didn't have many going through, but we had to have a poll worker sit right there and make sure that the belt went in the right way. Sometimes you had to turn it over, but the observation from people who've done this for, in some cases, decades, said he seemed to think that the ballot was thinner than it was before. It wasn't as sturdy.
It's 8-pound paper, same as we use.
I'm just saying that's your observation after,
Yeah.
Lenny's been doing it for 30 years.
One of the other things though too is no inspector is supposed to sit next to the machine and observe how the voter votes. Ever.
Well, they couldn't get the ballots through.
Unless the voter asks for assistance, the inspector should be nowhere near the machine.
so that's a protocol that needs to be handled at the locations.
Well, Tom,
And the
that
class.
the inspector,
Correct, but the problem was the ballots were
Right,
right.
yeah, it was like that.
we had people that are helpful people who want to help.
Second is that how much testing you do on these? Why didn't this show up on the testing ballots weeks before?
Because they run deck, run.
Well, it's just we don't use the stuff, we just use 8.5 by 17. The other one's just the stub paper, it's 8.5 by 17 with a 2-inch stub, because that's what we staple the
So
ballot.
why wouldn't you test those ahead of time?
Because you can't, you have to sit and tear all the stubs off.
Or you just test, you have a test, you tear the one.
No, you can't, you have to test that, you have to run like 300 there's a series of formulas, you have to mark all these test stacks, you don't just run one. You have to run, there's 300, I had like 300 ballots that you have to run through. There's a comprehensive test stack, and then there's a standard test stack.
It never occurred to
It's a
us.
series of, it's not just one ballot that you run through, you gotta run a series of, there's a formula you have to go through and mark all these test stacks and run them all through to make sure, then you have to look at the tape and then run and make sure everything matches the tape to the marked ballots.
But that would have found a problem.
So again, why were you testing what you're using? I would have tested every single scenario before it goes out there.
We did, that's
What you didn't do with the stubs. You didn't test with the
Well,
stubs.
we can't with this, you can't run a stub through the, there's just the ballot. The
You're
stub
talking
is
about-
just attached to make the booklet.
You're talking about two different pieces of paper. Okay, this one's 17 inches long, this one's 19 inches long. That stub has nothing on it that goes through the machine, nothing whatsoever.
Why were the stubs creating a problem?
Because it's coming out of an external drawer into the printer. These are actually in a drawer in the printer. The 19 inches are in an external drawer. It comes in and it has to flip over to be printed and flipped over back to print out. And it didn't like that perforation. Okay, it never occurred to us that we need to test a ballot that had a stub on it and tear the stub off and then test it. It
For
makes sense.
12 years. we
Doesn't
haven't
mean
had
you had never had that problem before. We anticipated. And then with all the monkeying that the machine did, I'm pretty sure that the guys that came in and did the maintenance, it's off because of something they did, they replaced it. It didn't correct.
Sometimes you put new parts on something old and it doesn't run smooth or vice versa.
That's.
Okay.
We're better before you work.
Any other questions, Dave?
I have two other things quickly. Ballot runners. I seem to remember in the past, one person took the ballots
That's
at
correct.
9 o'clock.
Yep.
From Hampton to Whitehall, and another person, single, picked them up all the way through and took them over to election house.
Almost ready.
Shouldn't there be two people?
There were in Whitehall. Because we had the Gordons come from Putnam, picked up Putnam, Dresden, Whitehall, and Hampton. Whitehall, right back, but the one from Hampton went to Whitehall.
Right, I remember Kevin Hayes used to do it.
Yep.
We're back way in the past about something that happened way back.
No, but his
No, it
point
might be
is
a
that
continual
the courier is a
practice.
single person with a chain of custody.
Chain of custody.
We always had.
And the last thing
We're on
was,
the list.
who should be the designated spokesperson for something like this? Should it be them or should it be you, or the chair?
So the way we handled that this time, like Sam said, once we got the heard that there were some issues there, Sam, Melissa, and I went over to Board of Elections, kind of set up a little confab in the conference room over at Burgoyne. Talked to the commissioners about what they needed. We brought Tim Hardy with us. We brought somebody from Buildings and Grounds, because at that point, we understood that they needed to have blanks run, and there was talk that maybe the commissioners would start running blanks, and it was determined that perhaps it would be better served if they stayed there and dealt with problems rather than running around the county doing blank ballots. So we got blank ballots out through Buildings and Grounds drivers. They took their trucks and ran ballots blanks to the various places. And we sat down with Tim Hardy. He drafted a statement with my input, with the chairman's input, with Melissa's input, so that we could get out, what had happened. That was a statement that you saw that went out on Facebook and everything else. The two commissioners signed it jointly. We had to wait a little bit to get them both on this, both in the same place so they could read it. And we put it out, I think fairly quickly and fairly accurately, in light of some of the other things that were being said, which were less than helpful. Put it bluntly, but I'm probably not a good spokesperson in that case, because there was a legal challenge in that perspective. So I was representing the county in that legal challenge, which ended up being withdrawn, by the way. So it was much ado about nothing once the margin of the vote margin came in, the parties withdrew it. The order wasn't even filed. It was basically a legally a non-event. But at the time, I was talking with lawyers who did campaigns for that regard, so I wasn't a good person to be the face of it. But Tim Hardy is very good at writing those statements, and so he took the first draft with input from me, the chairman, Melissa, and the commissioners, and we put it out that way. So that's the way we handled it this time around. My viewpoint is, again, I think Sam said it right. There's, having the commissioners doing courier work makes no sense to me. They should be running the show, not running the ballots. And we have people that can do, I want to say, not menial, smaller tasks, more efficiently, I think, that we have to learn to draw on. And that's a problem that the county has in general. We have departments, a lot of departments, I'm not pointing fingers in any elections, but if they need to move something, they will go rent a truck. And it's like, I have trucks coming out of my trucks over here. If they need to talk between 2 points, they will go buy a set of walkie-talkies when I have a full communications department in the basement that can help them do that stuff. And we need to get our department heads on the page of, ask for help, and ask if you don't have an asset, somebody else from the county probably has that asset already. And all you have to do is ask for it, and then either that asset or that expertise is already available in-house. Chances are, and if not, we know who to call to get it for you if we don't have it in-house. And so better communication can solve that amongst the departments, can solve that problem. And I think would have avoided some of the problems that we had. Not the mechanical things, but the moving around things. And then once the court order was filed, nothing else moved. The sheriff's department went to each polling site, which took a while because we had I believe it was three, it might have been 4 deputies. They were basically stationed at 9 o'clock around the perimeter of the county, and then they all started collapsing toward Fort Edward by picking up all the ballots. And it took, just because of our geography, it took a long time to get to each one of those polling sites, make sure that they were all wrapped up, signed the chain of custody. They all had signed chain of custody. They came back, they signed off on it when they got here. And then the actual counting was, that didn't take long at all. We purchased a high-speed ballot scanner that they used, and that went, once everything was in the hopper, it was probably less than 20 minutes before they had everything banged through.
Yeah, and the other aspect of that as well was the original state Board of Election comment was that any of these ballots that were put aside that it didn't read, that were put in the emergency thing, were going to have to be counted by the people on site at that point in time.
Right. Yeah.
So at that point in time, Jeff and Tom read what the law said, and that's exactly what it said. And Dean Martindale was there at that point in time because Roger was tasked doing something else. And so we called it the state board back. And the comment from the gentleman that was on the phone was that explain the magnitude of what's going on to him. he says, well, this law is designed for onesies and twosies. And I says, well, that's exactly my point. Why would it apply here? We could be talking about hundreds of ballots. You know, and you expect these senior citizens that are out there, and most of them are working our polls. You know, that maybe some have been there since, 5:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night to count those with any integrity. You know, these people have been there all day. That doesn't make any sense. And they finally consented through the judge that we could run into our high thing here. We had people at a polls count all hours of the night.
That was our request.
Yeah.
I requested that of the judge, once we had the appearance from the judge, I said, Judge, if you'd like to bring them back, because we can count them a lot more efficiently and a lot more quickly. Back here, and the other parties that were that, which was the governor's Zeldin's campaign, and I think somebody from the state Republican Party, they all consented to that because they wanted quicker results too. So that's when the sheriff got, and the sheriff, actually the undersheriff, when I mentioned the people that came over, the undersheriff came over to that initial meeting too, in the late morning, early afternoon, whatever it was, we got everybody together. And started coordinating the ballot pickup at the end of the day. So we had extra guys on so that they could do that. So we didn't lose any control capacity that night.
Okay. Tom,
Three things I want to make a comment, and thank you, Sam, because it's where I was going to go to say about the inspectors counting, which would have been very difficult, but they're not trained to do that. Although that would be their responsibility. They have no experience doing that whatsoever. A couple of years ago, we used to call in numbers from poll sites and things would get transposed horribly by verbal. So I was thinking of having inspectors trying to count at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And the judge was very thankful for the judge to make that decision to let us bring it back. The couriers, in the morning, we had never encountered this before as the Board of Elections. So what's the plan and how to do it? And I'm asked forgiveness for not thinking more of my county to be helpful, but we haven't asked the county for a lot of help on stuff because we haven't needed to, okay, in a situation like this. So it didn't occur to us. And then when you guys came in and said, oh, we can send so-and-so to take the ballot. So I'm going, all right, this is helpful. Thank you. Because it was, I went to Argyle and he went to Ramble, and when we're gone, there's a vacuum of just answering the phone, which is ringing off the book. And people that come in from the poll site for whatever 1, 2, and 5. So that was extremely helpful, but we hadn't thought of it as a resource to tap into until actually you brought it to us. And then the third thing, I was generally the spokesman for phone for media and people calling, wanting to know what was going on with an explanation for the candidates, representatives, and it was a long day trying to make explanations and trying to be transparent to people. So for media point, I was that, bringing up the other three people to deal with everything else that was going on.
Okay, well, you've hit several of the things that I wanted to. I'd like to take a fiscal step backwards. You now want to buy a new printer for every district, print out the things. Does that make this $60,000 wonder that we bought obsolete? Is that just going to sit there and be a boat anchor?
No, we have a $50,000 grant we haven't used.
But we still use that printer also. And we'll still
That we
use
can
that.
purchase now.
That's two answers, two completely different answers right there. That's why one of you needs to speak at a time.
We're gonna buy new little printers to print out right at the poll sites.
That's not funny, Jeff.
What's happening to the big one over here that we just bought?
Well, we still use it in the office for other things, but we still have to print emergency ballots that would have to go out to a poll site in case the printer on the table failed. That would be a backup. We do several backup things for the election. For instance, there's a backup poll book for the county that goes out or to the town. All districts, so we
But
still have
this-
printing needs, yes.
This $60,000 wonder was supposed to solve all our problems, and now it apparently is causing all our problems.
Well, that thing is also about 5 years old too.
Okay.
It might have been the paper that we purchased for it.
And that is,
The printer might have been okay if we didn't buy, 8-pound paper. If we bought 20-pound paper, it might have worked. So maybe there's nothing wrong with that printer.
In which case, we shouldn't necessarily have to buy a whole, however many new printers. What,
The
any idea what that's gonna cost us?
new printers,
Like 1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
That was on demand.
the on-demand printers are just a little less than $1,000 each. And we have enough in the grant money to purchase them all.
That's 17 grand.
Can we clarify whole sites versus districts when we discuss? Because I think they're getting a little confused there. I just want to make sure there are 50
Districts.
whole sites and districts. Thank you.
Well,
That's
just-
exactly where I'm going.
50 districts.
50 districts,
Buildings versus districts.
50 districts?
Right.
50 districts.
Okay, so if there are 3 districts and 1 pole site, there'd be 3 printers there.
We could, if we wanted to buy that many, yes. Normally. it'd be-
Well, I thought you were buying a printer for every district, and that way that's what you asked.
No,
iPad.
I was asking.
No, iPads are different than printers.
Yes.
Yes, I was asking iPads, but I get what you're saying now, because if they take away quick, for example, they have District 3, they would get their own printer, District 1 and 2 would share a printer. Because they already said that those iPads can print to the same printer, and they'll print different ballots. So you only need one printer for each poll site.
Jeff,
Each poll book would have its own on-demand printer. So however many poll books you have at the poll site, it would have its own on-demand printer.
Does each district have its own poll book?
The single districts have one poll book, and some of the districts that, or poll sites that have 3 districts have 2 poll books.
How many poll sites are there?
26 poll sites. But some of those have 2.
No,
Yeah,
we got 3 districts in 1 poll site. I don't need more printer.
Right, you would need a printer for each poll book you have in that poll site.
But Tom said earlier that you could print a different ballot from, so if you have.
yes,
Yeah, but you want each poll book that you, this voter signs to, will have its own on-demand printer.
Each iPad.
Yeah.
So your one iPad can handle, so we're talking about poll books in the sense of the old
Right.
perforated, whatever.
Right.
iPad is the new term.
iPad, so your iPad, you can have more than one district on that iPad. So so if you have, like my poll site in Kingsbury has 3 districts. There were 2 people with iPads, so what they're handling 3 districts, they want to have a printer for each iPad.
So Roger, to be clear, there's a poll site,
There's
there's a poll book, and there's a district. There's 3 different numbers. Is that correct? There are 50 districts.
You're right.
There
Right.
are 26 poll sites.
Outside and district are not the same thing.
Right, one site.
Exactly.
Right.
One's 50, one's 26.
Yes.
But you could have 1 poll book for 2 districts. It's a 3rd number
Correct,
that we need to deal with.
correct.
And how many of those?
It would take a lot longer to get through that than switching back. and
Somewhere
forth.
between 50 and 26 is the number, right?
Right.
We don't know what that number is.
so why don't we think about, they have
I
the
guess that's a
numbers,
good way
they
to
have
look
the
at it.
numbers of the poll sites, they have the recommendations for the number of poll books for how many districts should be in each poll book. They have the idea of what the pricing is going to be for all that. So why don't you break it all down and do it in a presentation with numbers where we're not talking around, and why it's written down in front of everybody, they can do it, but then we'll have it written down in front of everybody, can have their own copy. We can show them the towns, the districts, the poll books, the recommendations, average number of voters, that answers all the questions on how you got to how many you're gonna have in each unit. That work for everybody? Okay,
I got one more thing.
okay. Well, Jim and Dan are on the list still, too.
Then let it go.
I'm good with my question.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Concern, okay, when county sold the recycling centers, we sold the trucks, okay? Since then, we've been renting trucks for delivery of the machines and pickup of the machines. This year, we spent almost $9,000 in rental on the trucks for the 3 elections. And that's up $1,000 from each from last year. And it's probably gonna go more. The request or the concern is if we're gonna spend that amount of money over every year, wouldn't it be more beneficial that the county had their own trucks with lifts on them that could be used by everybody? Not only us. Just an idea.
Seem to keep
We
it.
just spent on the general election, $3,781 for 2 days. We had to run it for a week, 2 trucks. Those two, that's a lot of money.
Versus buying a $50,000 truck
With a lift
times
gate,
how many you
Plus
need.
maintenance. plus
Yes, I
maintenance.
understand that. I'm just trying to say.
And 5 years later, you're gonna sell them.
They're making us aware of the fact of how much money
Yeah,
is
it's just
being
if they keep
spent.
jacking up, that's all. We're
I
just letting
understand
you
it's a
know.
lot, I just.
Yeah,
think-
keep jacking.
I understand, yeah, $50,000 truck, but a used truck,
Hundred probably just got a lift gate.
kind of what you.
So I think it's definitely a number you need to bring forward every year on how much it's costing as a summary at every election, and what it's gonna be, so it keeps it in the forefront and it doesn't get forgotten.
But I think it's
But, I mean-
uneconomical to buy one.
What did you say, Dana?
It's uneconomical to buy one,
And here's,
but buy not one, plural.
yeah, 2.
And $100,000, that's 10 years worth of rental, and you're probably gonna be too old to sell it before you get your money back.
Right, but the point is now we'll know exactly how much money, I mean, saying that we're renting a truck to deliver machines is one thing. Another thing is to say it costs over $9,000 for us to bring the machines out is another thing. And it's a number that, next year somebody might be going, why weren't we told that? So if they include it and bring it forward every year, we're aware of it.
One of the other driving things behind this is availability. For the August primary, we almost only had 1 truck because they couldn't get the other one for us. And they've told us that in all 3 elections, because we put in early for them. We get them, and every other county and state is looking for them too. And there's a shortage of them being manufactured. So just making,
These are box trucks, right, Tom?
yeah, the box trucks.
When we were talking about, the comment was, there was very few other departments in the county that needed the lift trucks.
Yes, I know.
Right, but we're still putting the number in front of
But they might need a box truck, so if we just modify the box truck to have a lift on it, to make it more universally usable.
Right up and down.
Dan, did you have any more questions? You were still at the
Absolutely.
bottom of the list.
More of a comment than a question, Tom, and you and Jeff, I want to tell you, I appreciate all the work you do, even though we've been really complaining today. So don't take it personal. I appreciate it. If you would consider 2 things, and for a lot of it from what I've heard today. And you're talking about possibly new machines you want to get. And then Jeff was talking about how long it takes to certify these before they go out. And you do it in advance before they go out. We moved from upstairs to downstairs in our town hall, and we have a printer copier on wheels. And the company that we get it from says if we move that downstairs on our own, we warranty and void anything to that. And now you're taking these, you're certifying them here. You're rolling them outside and you're putting them into a 5-ton truck that the suspension isn't the best in the world. Then you're bringing it back in from a cold environment. Whatever you get for a new machine, be sensitive of that. And, I know that I'm just hearing stuff today that I really think we need to think about. The second one is if power goes out in a polling site, can you still function the way you are set up right now?
There's an emergency poll book that's put in there.
Well, the problem is if you have a printer on site, will you be able to?
Where we send out extra ballots, printed ballots just for that purpose too.
So you would still print out as many ballots as you would need, only,
No,
No, not that.
not as many.
well, if the power goes out, I want that to be considered. I'm not saying what to do.
You've got backup batteries.
We gotta back up.
Well, but I mean, that's all stuff we gotta buy. That's all I'm saying.
Actually, the backup batteries are included in the machines. That we want.
And the third thing is, it's really scary, is if you don't have a printer for every iPad, what's gonna happen when you've got 3 districts, 1 poll site, 2 iPads, and you press for a certain district, which one got printed first when there's 2 iPads and who gets it?
You got to
Under
have
line.
a printer for each iPad.
Right.
Right, you gotta have a printer for every iPad. That's all I'm saying.
Right, no, you have to.
I mean, but that wasn't being said. It's like McDonald's when they got 2 places to order. I've seen the time people get ugly when one cuts ahead of the other one.
Right.
And throws the system off. So somehow you gotta consider all that. And I think there's been a lot of good stuff discussed here today. I want to commend you on your hard work and your ability to take this from us. I appreciate it.
Tom, you had one more comment?
Yeah, it's kind of a summary thing. One of the, I didn't go home until after 2 a.m. that morning. And I get a good time to talk with my wife about different things that happened. One of the things that I really did appreciate is the help that we got, the positive comments that we got from several supervisors afterwards and other people that were involved in the process to support us and try to help us take care of this, particularly Roger, the judge, and Sam as well, that we weren't alone in this and we appreciated the help, and it could have been so much worse. It could have gone so badly in so many ways. I took ballots over to Argyle. First thing in the morning, there was 35 people waiting in line out in the parking lot. I gave them the new ballots. They started using them. I left 15 minutes later. There was only about 4 or 5 people. That's what's going on. So we had found a solution, and then we moved on to the next step. And then on to the next step. In each case, our people did great. Really. So I just wanted to say thank you for all of that support.
Matt,
So you realize we have to do, excuse my phrase here, I can't think of another one, an autopsy on what happened here, right? It needed to be done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Postmortem, thank you. It needed to be done, and these things need to be pointed out, okay? We needed to know what's the problem with the machines, with the ballots, whatever it is, we need to figure that out.
All right.
And to some degree, you guys need to own this because it's your department. You have to understand that,
Right.
all right? Things slow downhill, it's coming to you guys,
Yeah.
all right? You need to take it, and we need to take it from there. We understand, you guys try to put a protocol in place, and Roger's saying all the ballots were counted, everything was tallied, and it all worked out great. We're all happy with that. The issue now going forward is, what do we do so this doesn't happen? And what can you project other issues that might happen to make sure they don't happen going forward? So again, I'm with you. The protocol needs to be put in place. We need to make sure that if this happens again, this is what's going to happen. And the inspectors know about that. They took the brunt of it.
Yes.
They took it badly, at least in my town, because we didn't get them until 1:30 in the afternoon. It was 6 hours of hell, to be honest, for them.
I understand.
We need to vet this protocol and what we're gonna plan to do going forward in this committee, not just in your department, because we all gotta know what's going on, and you need to take input from us so we can think about how we can throw something at you to say, how can you prevent this from happening in 2024? So understand we're all on the same team, but we want to make sure this doesn't happen again. And this needs to be completely vetted in this committee, big time. Whatever
We
decision we
understand.
make and your committee makes about moving forward with hardware.
right, so we need to understand that it was a challenge, but we also understand that you needed a crystal ball to see that perfect storm coming. I mean, you can think of all the, like Dan said, the power being out, a water leak in the building. There's always going to be something that you're not going to have thought of. You just have to think about, now that this has happened, you'll be able to react quicker because now you have the experience. So, and it was a challenge. Now you know where to go for your help, move quicker and stuff like that. So that's good. And then you'll come back next month, or do you think you'll have those numbers and figures
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff to bring us next month?
So if they're considering going with a different vendor than is approved by the state at this point, are we in limbo until the state makes that decision? What if we make the decision in September? You know what I mean?
I think you can still make actions and then we will know, because if it's in the process of being approved and we isolate ourselves only to one option because only one is approved right now, but there's 2 in the pipeline, I think it is beneficial for them to use to give us all the information, understanding that even if we like choice B the best, it might not happen, but we'll be able to see all the options and prioritize them and know.
I mean, we're pretty well set on that
Two
one.
things.
We like that one.
What we're looking at next year is we have a village to do in March, right? We have one village.
Right.
And then June primary, this is the off year, this is where all you guys are up for election. And so it's a kind of an off year in June, and primaries are scarce usually at this level, on the town levels. And then we've got the county elections next year too, for treasurer, sheriff, coroner, and county clerk. So having a primary at this point, we don't know. We just don't know at this point. And then, of course, then in November, so it's a fairly light year in the coming year. Second thing, one of the things that's happening is can you write on this job, is that word is going to expire. And next year, I believe, they're just gonna shut it down, and our program to create ballots is based on word. So it's gonna have to be replaced.
Yeah, they're gonna be obsolete, and I'm gonna be able to use these.
We call it the EMS, it's the thing we actually sit at and we create the ballot with. That program is going to be no longer functional.
So that's why.
So this is an immediate need that we can't avoid, that goes along with buying new machines. The program is going to be shot.
Okay, so you got a lot of work to do to bring it all back to us for next
We'll
month.
include that with the other estimates.
So we'll have numbers, poll sites, all that. All the stuff you heard today, you'll be able to go, look, it's this page, that's that page. Okay. Any other questions for government?
Without my budget, 2023 budget in front of me, I already know we haven't budgeted enough for Board of Elections.
It's been discussed at the ARPA committee about using potential ARPA money for that purpose. It has not been determined, it has not been forwarded to the committee or to the board, but it is under discussion.
But
It's been
also Jeff
discussed
mentioned there may
before.
be a grant to help purchase new scanners, right?
On-demand printers.
On-demand printers. But you know, the thing is, the more, with the old voting where you actually hit a lever and there was a rod that punched something, was foolproof. You didn't even, I don't even think you had to plug it into the wall. As we're getting more and more technology, we're going backwards in our ability to conduct things. You can't do anything now without electricity, without these poll books. When the other way was sign your name, yeah, that looks like your signature, tear it out. You didn't even tear it out, you just went to close the curtain, flick, 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 flick. But for some reason, New York State said that was terrible. Well, we should have kept the damn things. Can we go back? Can we go backwards in technology?
My signature on the iPad is nothing like my signature.
No, you're not alone.
No one's does.
No, not really.
Did they even look?
Any
Yeah,
other
they do,
questions?
actually. My daughter in Hebron said, that doesn't look like your signature. I wiped it out, do it again. They do.
Any other questions or subjects to come up before government ops today? Okay, we're adjourned.